So that is just for your information. If you haven't had a chance to see any of the documents, and I'm sure everybody in here at some point or another has seen this, but this is the rendering of what the front may look like as we move forward. Just very quickly, just our agenda for the time that we have. I'd like to do a little bit of introduction of the team that's here in just a second. Then we're going to go through a little bit of the project history, and I'll try not to go too
deeply into the history, since many of you are part of the history that were there. Talk about the timeline, reviewing our timeline and looking ahead. Then we would move into design and engagements. Who, when, where is the process, design review, which includes site and floor plans and programming. And this is really kind of getting into the heart of what our school is going to look like. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and feedback. But before we do that, I want to introduce to you two people that are going to be extremely important to all of us to know, who are also going to introduce their team to you. And the first is Jennifer Max, and the second is Daisy Brangman. Jennifer, let me start with Daisy first. Daisy Brangman comes to us from Brailsford and Dunleavy, and she is the part of the owner's representation group. So Brailsford and Dunleavy was contracted about 6 months ago by the City of Falls Church Schools to serve in the role as owner's rep. So I'm going to invite Daisy up to introduce herself, and then to introduce her team, and then we'll ask Jennifer to come up as well. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. I do want to take just a few minutes to introduce, we actually have a pretty broad team. We're providing the City of Falls Church and Falls Church City Public Schools with an all-in service and owner's representation. So we've got executives, we've got communications managers, we've got planning specialists, and we're pulling and really leveraging off of them as we get to those phases of the project. So with me here this afternoon, I've got Karen Somerville, who's in the back. She was helping us handing out pens and Post-its as you came in. She's our communications manager and strategist, so she's going to be working with us as we engage in these types of work sessions and community engagement, because we know that this little city has a lot of heart in this project. It means a lot to you, so we want to put everything into it, make sure that we're hearing every voice. Also with me is Anu Pillai Bowers. She is our design and cost manager, so she's going to be working. You're going to be seeing a lot of her during these probably next 3 to 4 months as we work with the Gilbane and Stantec and Quinn Evans team during the pre-design and design, the pre-construction and design of the project. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Max. I'm the executive from Gilbane. We were the design builder selected for this project. So we'll be leading the construction efforts, but lots of what you're going to hear over the next year is going to be focused on the design team and all the hard work to reflect what the community and the school is looking for in this new high school. Leading our design team is Dirk Jeffrey, who you're going to hear quite a bit from today. Also, Bill Bradley, who's leading educational planning for Stantec. We also have Quinn Evans supporting Stantec as a part of the architectural planning, and Jack Chin is here representing Quinn Evans today. Throughout the design process, you'll also hear from several of our other consultants, so civil engineering, structural, all the technology consulting. So as we get further into the design process, you'll hear additional individuals that will get added to our team.
All right, thank you, Daisy and Jennifer. Just a quick comment about both Brailsford and Dunleavy and the Gilbane, Stantec, Quinn Evans team. And as part of the process for selection, the pieces that were really important to us as we went out and were looking for owner's representation, and finally our design build team, were the connectedness with the City of Falls Church and how well did they understand us and understand our project. And both teams, and when I say teams, I really mean teams, because it's not individuals. They truly are people that are coming together, working closely on behalf of the City of Falls Church Schools, did an incredible amount of homework and research and dedicated themselves to understanding this project at a deep level before they were selected. So I just want to say thanks publicly to both teams for doing that and being really all in. So when Daisy says we're an all-in service, truly they are. We hear from 6 or 7 different people that are operating on our behalf as the owner's representative. So let me just talk a little bit about today, just to kind of help set the tone and in some ways sort of manage what the expectation is. Today, obviously, is the first opportunity for us to kind of come together as a group to talk about the new high school and what it's going to look like. I would say, and Phil Duncan has been very, very good about reminding us when we say, well, we've been at this for 10 years. We actually have been at it for more than 10 years. Probably more like since 2005 that there has been conversations about a new high school here in the city of Falls Church. So today, really in the time frame of 2005 to 2018, begins to represent what might be the end of the planning phases for our high school. What we have now before us is a really outstanding design that has met many of the needs that came out of the history of the design, and I'll share some of that history in a few minutes. So there are some things in this plan that I would say are baked in or are solidly set. For example, where the building's going to be, potentially how many stories it's going to be, how the field is going to be. Fields are going to be on the back side of the building and the like. But there are some places that we are asking for your engagement in, and what you'll see around the room today are a number of different pieces of chart paper that are headed. And they are headed by, for example, community use, athletics, fine and performing arts. Over here we have academics and sustainability. And those are, and there's one other one in the back. Matt, what is that last one? Parking and transportation. And those, and one more?
Instruction.
And instruction. Why does instruction always get forgotten?
It's construction.
Is it construction? Anyway, the big point is that we have tried very hard to identify the categories in which we are really trying to gather some and garner some feedback from you all on with respect to this plan. So when you came in today, hopefully you got some post-it notes and will be able to write down some questions or some thoughts that you have as the presentation is being done. Because at the end of the presentation, what we're going to ask from you is that you take your post-it notes and you place them on the appropriate chart. So for example, if you have a question about building use, you would put it under the community use poster. If you have a question about athletics, obviously it would go under athletics. And each of these posters at the end of the meeting will be stationed with staff from the schools and also with Brailsford and Dunleavy. Some of our school board members are going to be moving around, listening to the conversations. And then at the end, what we're going to ask is whoever is at each of those stations that they report out what were the top 3 sort of things that came to the front. So they'll be looking at duplicates, things that overlap and the like, and then identify those top 3 items. And we'll try to address as many of the questions as we can this afternoon, but I want to make sure that I'm really clear. Our intention is to answer all of the questions and answer them all publicly on our website, fccps.org. And so we are hoping that you will go onto our website when we begin to answer these questions and take a look at those as we move ahead. So that's the working plan for today. Obviously, it's our first day out with this conversation, so the idea of being able to answer all of the questions is obviously not reasonable, but we do want to get to as many as we can today, but more than anything, sort of get them out and get a chance to hear from you about what some of your questions and concerns and thoughts, and don't be afraid to write really positive things also. So if you see some things that you're really excited about, feel free to write those down. So at the end, we will connect and follow, which means that we'll review sort of what we heard, and then we will look ahead into the future as well. So again, I'm going to do the history piece of this. Normally, this is reserved for Mary Beth Connolly, who is our resident historian, but she's not able to be here today. But I do want to spend just a second talking about this because I think it's important to know how long we've been at this. And somebody pointed out that at the bottom of this timeline, you'll see 2005, because in 2005, it's when the very first conversations about the new high school really began in earnest perking. So in 2008, 2009, there was a year-long evaluation by the City of Falls Church Schools to look at and make recommendations for the entire capital plan for the division, looking at not only Thomas Jefferson, looking at Mount Daniel, and then potentially expanding or rebuilding George Mason High School. In November of 2013, there was a referendum that was passed in Falls Church to move the water system to Fairfax County, and as a consequence of that, we were able to capture the land that this high school and Mary Ellen Henderson sit on currently, and I know all of you know that, but it's a really important factor in this project because this land now is area that we have control over. So that was an important moment in the history. In the spring of 14, there was a capacity study that was done, and that was done by RTKL. And as part of that capacity study in space fit, they started to look at what are the possibilities, what are the positives, what are some of the negatives, what could be the consequences of looking at some sort of capacity study along with some sort of mixed use and development. And in October of 14, the Urban Land Institute did their ULI TAP study, and they provided a lot of suggestions to the school system and to the city about what the potentiality could be here in the city of Falls Church with respect to this particular site. In June and July of 2015, there was further outreach. Cooper Carey was contracted to come into the city. Some of you in this room were probably part of those conversations where there was some visioning. There was a lot of conversation again of what could happen at the school site. And they prepared and finalized their report and delivered it in July of 2015. And by the way, all of these reports that I'm referencing are on our website, so you can go back and you can pull that information and take a look at them yourselves as well. And in October, there was a shared vision of the schools for the future that was done. And there was a lot of community feedback. Again, many of you were part of those conversations as well. And then in November of 15 through April of 16 and March 30 and April 6, 2016, there was the conversation about the Public-Private Education Act and how we may be able to leverage and utilize the PPEA for the work that can happen here at George Mason High School. And so we are engaged in a PPEA process right now that we have described on the website as best we can. And then in February of 17, again, Link came out and provided more information about what could happen here at the site, and they provided a number of options. One was minimal renovation, another was to build a new school in 2 phases, or option 3 was to build an entirely new school. Fast forwarding to the last year, in March of 2017, and all the way through May of 17, we did a couple of things. One is we did look more closely at what some options could be as part of a feasibility study that was done by Perkins Eastman, and that was done with the school board in mind. And out of that came this rendering that some of you have become familiar with and may have seen, but this feasibility study really provided us an opportunity then to sort of vision what could this school really look like if we were to go forward. So following the June 17 feasibility study, we went out to the community, all of you here, and the school board and the city council, and asked that we be able to put a referendum on the ballot for November. It was on the ballot. Thank you very much for passing it. And that bond did pass, as the city manager suggested before, giving us the authority for a $120 million new high school. And so we went through the RFDP process and landed with Gilbane, Stantec, and Quinn Evans, thankfully. And today we're going to get a chance to hear from them about the project that they've designed, that the RFDP down select team, which included city council member, school board member, community member, and school staff, did do the selection of. So then we get to, again, the August dates here, and you'll start to see how it begins to conceptually line out with spaces and some of the grid patterns for how traffic potentially could flow through the site. So that is sort of the history in a nutshell. So thank you for hanging in there, even though many of you were part of it and know about it. But I do think it's important to note that we really have been at this dating all the way back to 2005. So fast forwarding to 2018, one of the things you will hear is that the Gilbane, Stantec, Quinn Evans team, when I talk about doing their homework, really did do their homework and went back and read every last report that had been developed, and as a consequence of that, took all of that feedback, including the ed specifications that we gave to them, and came forward with the design that you're going to see today. So with that history in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Daisy Brangman from Brailsford and Dunleavy, who's going to take it from here.
Thank Thank you, Dr. Newman. So we're just, I'm going to recap a little bit and then we're going to move forward because I know you're all excited to kind of find out where do we go next. We have this amazing team that's joined us. So as Dr. Newman mentioned, in 2017, the request for concept proposals for the design build team was put out publicly. In January of 17, we received their submission. There was a down selection to 3 teams. In February of this year, we put out the request for detailed proposals, and in May of 17, we received the proposals. And then in July, we did the final selection of the Gilbane, Stantec, Quinn Evans team, and we received approval from the school board. So this peach area shows you everything that we've covered over the past 9 months, 10 months. So this is the similar graphic that you've been seeing for about a year or so. So the next step that's always been shown to you is construction, but there's a gap in there that's missing. So what's the next step between selection and construction? So we're going to have a detailed design process between August, starting today, and really June of 2019. And I'm going to dive into a little bit of detail. So the first phase is schematic design. This is where we're really going to engage the community. We're doing what we call program validation, design validation. We have the ability now to give the Gilbane Stantec team, our honest, feedback on kind of what are our dislikes and likes of their concept design. So we have the community sessions that are scheduled, and we also have, I believe, at least 1 or 2 meetings scheduled every week for the next 5 weeks with various levels of staff, and I'll dive into a little bit more detail of that later. The next step will be design development. So once we have everybody's feedback and input and we've done our working sessions, the design team is able to dive in and start developing all of the details that go into the construction design process, really, defining the programs, your furnishings, all the details of it. And it'll also inform the site permit submission. The next step is construction documents, which actually consists of 2 portions of design. So the first is the GMP, which is the guaranteed maximum price. The Gilbane team will be working on both the pricing, which will be based on the design development drawings, and then we'll engage in negotiation. And this is where they give us, here is the cost of of construction for your building. Based on the information and that negotiation, they will start developing the permit documents. All of that information combined will inform the construction documents, which is what will be given to the various trade contractors, that will work with the Gilbane team to build the building. And that will take us to construction, which we're anticipating starting July of 2019. So what is the detailed design process and engagement? The first phase is the schematic design, where we're going to engage with the community, Falls Church City Public Schools leadership and directors, George Mason High School department leads and CTLs, the teachers, and also our permit and partner agencies, including, Planning Commission, Virginia Tech, UVA, WMATA. There's probably at least a dozen various entities that we've already started talking to. So the schedule is from July to October of 2018. We've actually already had a few meetings with some of the Falls Church City Public School staff and partner agencies. We're going to be doing this engagement. And then August through October of 2018 is when we have our community presentations and our subcommittee sessions. So the subcommittees that have been identified are academics, athletics, fine and performing arts, community use, sustainability and environmental, parking and transportation. And that's based on the feedback that Falls Church City Public Schools has received to date. Working together with Mary Beth Connolly, these are the categories that have been established. So the meeting schedule, of course, today we have our first presentation where the Gilbane team is going to give you a detailed, the Gilbane and Stantec and Quinn Evans team is going to give you a detailed dive and perspective into the design and the reasoning for it, a little bit more than what you've seen on the website and the fly-through videos. The next meetings are going to be September 6th and September 23rd, and that's when we're going to do our subcommittee breakout groups. If you have not already done so and you're interested in, you're welcome to sign up for one of the subcommittees. And then September 26th will actually be a duplication of the September 23rd meeting in presentation. We will not have subcommittee breakout groups, but we'll have a similar setup to what we have tonight. Well, of course, there will still be additional opportunity for input, but it just provides the community 2 different dates at the end of September. And then in October, the design and construction team will return back, and they'll essentially show you the updated design based on all of the feedback, not just from the community, but also all the staff and partner and permit agency feedback that we've received up until then. So now I'm going to hand it over to Dirk Jeffries, who's leading the design for the team.
Thank you, Daisy. Good afternoon to everyone. Would it be okay if I'd like to begin just on behalf of my colleagues who are here today, Jennifer and Bill and Jack, by sharing with you just how excited we are for the opportunity to work with you to deliver your new high school and to take this next big step toward realizing your vision for this 34-acre campus. The things that are listed here, the things that we'd like to talk with you about today, talking about the building, the site design first, then the building design. Dr. Bradley will walk us through some of the tenets of 21st century learning and how that shows up in the design. And along the way, we'll call out the specific features of the athletics program, the performing arts program. We'll talk about safety and security, communities and access, and then also, of course, sustainable design. Before we do all that, we would also like to ask, just by show of hands, are there any students in the room this afternoon? Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Are there any parents here this afternoon? All right. Very good. Thank you for being here. How about teachers? Okay. How about school leadership, either at the school level or at the district leadership? Thank you for being here. Members of school board and city council we heard earlier. Thank you. Any city managers or mayors in the room this afternoon? Other employees of Falls Church City Public Schools or the City of Falls Church? Thank you for being here. Members of the business or nonprofit community here today? And anyone else who may see themselves as an advocate for or invested in the future of the City of Falls Church, raise your hand. Who did I forget? Okay, well, I do that because it's with you folks in mind that we have developed the design as you're about to see it. And keep in mind, this is a very preliminary design. It was accomplished between February and May, and the work that you're seeing hasn't advanced one bit since May. So we're about to follow the process that Daisy has just mapped out in order to refine the design to make it more reflective of the things that matter most to you. So that's where we are, and with that, I'll begin. They say that understanding something is the basis for action. Understanding is the basis for action. And so as you've heard, we did work very hard to understand all that you have done over the years to investigate the possibilities and the opportunities at this site. And so these are some of the many studies that you have conducted over the last several years. And if it's on your website, I think we found it and we read it. And so these are the covers of some of those reports. So honoring this work and trying to channel our best version of you is what we tried to do in the design. I also want to acknowledge especially the work of the feasibility study. It seems like it did a very good job of creating a framework around this idea of the community school, all the reasons that that's important, and the opportunities of integrating the academic campus with the West Falls Church Economic Development Project. So we've done our best to understand and to honor all of that work. And so beginning with the site, here we are on the 34-acre high school, middle school campus, the western gateway into Falls Church City. So anyway, just an aerial shot. This is the existing campus as it is today. You recognize the big airport terminal looking floor plan of George Mason High School next to the Mary Ellen Henderson Middle School, the existing athletic complex, and then the Virginia Tech and UVA building up in the upper right corner. Haycock Road to your right, Route 7, along the bottom. And so the facilities that remain existing throughout this project are the existing athletic stadium complex, the existing baseball field, and the existing middle school. Everything else is on the table. And so at the end of the day, this is what we've created. We have, as Dr. Noonan said, we've consolidated the athletic complex, so a new softball field, new tennis, new multi-use field, one consolidated athletic complex. And so right down the middle is a main pedestrian promenade that links parking straight back to the athletic stadium complex. Reserving 10 acres for the commercial development project, the Virginia Tech UVA campus to the north. The trapezoid shape right there is parking, and that leaves a very small piece of land for a building for 1,500 high school students. The other features of this proposed site plan, it's designed to retain bus parking for 20 school buses, although I understand that there may be an opportunity to relocate that facility off-site, in which case we can create either more car parking or more outdoor athletic space in that area. We have also relocated the delivery area for the middle school to the back. And so as you know, it's right on that side, the long side of the middle school, and so now we have relocated it to the back where you see deliveries, and we have created a shared food service area, one central kitchen with a separate serving line for the high school and separate serving line for the middle school, and then separate dining spaces as well. One centralized kitchen, one delivery area. And then also then in the trapezoid space, you'll see the space for car parking. By locating the cars here, then we also create the opportunity for shared use with the economic development project downstream, whether that is in the form of service parking or some form of structured parking. Maximizing that trapezoid for other uses is why we located that there. And so then you'll see the space that's reserved for the high school. So that is the layout. The road continues from Haycock along the top edge of the property, and then it angles down to the existing intersection on Route 7 where you would enter now for the middle school and where the traffic flows out in the afternoon. So that road exists, and if you can just look at where the trees are, that is the entry to the school, and you see those two yellow rectangles, those are school buses. That is the entry of the school. And so there is a blow-up of that space, and so you'll see there's specialized paving that links this bosque of trees on the east across this raised paved area for pedestrians, separated by bollards at the curb line, and then a very large entry plaza into the high school. So you might think of this as a huge entry mat out facing the community. But this is the sense of the quality of the pedestrian space that we have in mind for the entire school campus. And then on the back, that arc there is the outfield fence for the softball field. Those dogwoods or cherry blossoms, whatever they are along the edge, you'll see that that space just to the right, that's the dining terrace. So the cafeteria opens right out to a terrace that looks over, 10 feet above, looks over the softball field. And so the canopy of those trees will be well above your head, so it won't obstruct views onto the softball field. And so something like this is what we're talking about. You can see the middle school, you can see the two bars of the proposed high school, a 4-story bar and a 5-story bar above grade. You can see the consolidated athletic campus to the west and the landscaped parking area to the east, abutting the future commercial development. So in terms of the building, now that you understand those two bars, The notion of the heart of the school is a very strong organizing idea. Again, the heart of the school came from the feasibility study done by Perkins Eastman a year ago. And it was around the heart of the school that we considered how to organize all of the academic and community spaces that are part of the high school program. And so it's something like this, and it becomes something like this. So the diagram, the idea becomes this very dynamic, very vertical, very elongated heart of the school, where we have the gymnasium lobby at the far west, multi-height space. You enter, the auditorium is immediately on your right as a double height space. And then on the second level, the first level up, is the media center, the maker space, things of that nature. So, and then above that then, where you see the indoor amphitheater, that connects the third and the fourth floor in a very flexible, collaborative, very exciting space, and Bill will show you that in a moment. And then outdoor learning on top of that. So from top to bottom, from front to back, all of that is the heart of the school. The other idea is, how do you create something that's easy to build and remains flexible for the life of the building? And you do that by creating a modular and flexible building structure. So very few, as in no, load-bearing walls. This is a very simple column grid that allows one classroom or two to become a lab that are part of a pod which can repeat itself over many floors. And so that it looks something like this. If we were to cut a section through that wide bar, you can see how we have stacked academic space, a double height collaborative space, an outdoor terrace on top of the larger volume of the gymnasium, which sits on top of the locker rooms at the lowest level. And we'll look at that in just a moment. And there in the middle is the heart of the school. The 4-story wing, and then a space that mitigates the adjacency to the middle school on the right. So Bill, can I turn it over to you?
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thank you for having us here. As Dirk said, we're really excited to see you today because we've been thinking about you for the last 6 months, but haven't had an opportunity to actually talk to you. So it's wonderful to see all of you, the students, the teachers, the members of the community, and the central office staff. Thank you very much. I'm just curious, show of hands, how many of you have had a chance to flip through maybe our design or seen it online or maybe seen the video? So most of you, but not all of you. Okay, well, for those of you who have seen it, I think you'll recognize that it's not, maybe you've heard Dr. Noonan say before, it's not your grandfather's high school. Frankly, it's not my high school either, or maybe yours. And it differs in many ways from the existing George Mason High School because, after all, the program and the work that you did leading up to this called for a 21st century learning environment, as different from an industrial learning environment. 21st century, is part of that is really about recognizing that students don't all come the same, that we no longer have a one-size-fits-all approach to education, that we meet the students where they are. And as part of that, and Dirk, if you'll forward there, when we think about a traditional setting, this ought to look very familiar to all of you. This is very familiar to me, the school that I went to. It's the classrooms, the laboratories, flanking either side of a double-loaded corridor. And it's really the sage on the stage approach, sometimes called cells and bells, and it really recognizes students as all being the same, a one-size-fits-all approach. Very different now what we're doing in education, particularly if you think about Virginia's new profile of a graduate, which goes in effect this year. So this year's entering freshmen are beholden to that. If you transition to the next slide, the way we're seeing the spaces and places of schools evolve in response to 21st century education, in response to the new profile of a graduate, is to begin to break down some of the walls that separate and define the spaces. And so along with the traditional classrooms and laboratories, you have differentiated spaces for differentiated instruction. And so within and supporting the classrooms and laboratories, you have places for, and I was talking to someone before about breakout spaces, spaces for mindfulness, where students might go and retreat with another student or a teacher. You have spaces for not only whole group instruction, but small group instruction, also combined studies. And so the idea is to provide a variety of spaces within the school where any number of activities can happen, not just lecture, not just whole group instruction, but others in support of that. Next. And I think what you'll probably see, not today, but in the future, is a further erosion of that, so that as students pursue their interests, again in concert with this new profile of a Virginia graduate, teachers will assume not just the role that they traditionally have in a classroom, but of guiding students in that effort. And so the walls continue to break down. There's more differentiated spaces, more resources for the students and the teachers to have. And we've actually anticipated that in some ways in the design, as you'll see in some of the spaces. Next. And so the floor plan of the building, which Dirk is going to talk about in just a minute, it can be broken down into pods, traditional pods that could be departmentalized or might be within grade level, or however you choose to do that. Next. And then within those pods, you'll see a number of ways in which students can access these transitional spaces from their classrooms. And one thing I want to point out, and I'm sure it's something you're talking about right now in the community, is the visibility and the transparency. So if you think about those spaces outside of classrooms, if the walls separating those spaces in the classrooms were opaque, if the teachers couldn't see their students, they wouldn't be inclined to let them go outside the classroom, because ultimately they're accountable for those students. They have to have visibility. And when we visit schools that have transparency between the classrooms and these breakout and ancillary spaces, those spaces are teeming with activity. When we visit schools that have given a nod to the idea of 21st century learning, but haven't followed through with this idea of transparency, those spaces in which the school systems have invested a lot of money sit vacant in the middle of the day, which is really a shame for the amount of money they spend. Okay, you can't comment on that one. Whatever it was, it just fell. So what we're going to show you here are some of the spaces, some of the images, three-dimensional renderings of some of the spaces that are consistent with this 21st century learning transitional integral style approach to design in support of that learning. Next. This is that first slide that you saw, where we are here. And again, Dirk is going to talk to you about the floor plans, but you're on the 4th floor here. Okay, the 4th floor of the main academic wing. And on your right, you have classrooms and laboratories. On the other side, you have classrooms and laboratories. You have single-loaded corridors here, and you'll see that the corridors are eased to create eddies, breakout spaces where students can gather together, either in isolation by themselves to think or to work in collaboration with their peers. And then on the 3rd floor, you have this learning commons. And what you'll notice when the school opens is that there'll be a variety of furniture and a variety of ways to access technology, and different types of manipulatives for making and communicating and collaborating, these 5 C's of 21st century learning. One thing I'm going to point out is, again, we're on the 3rd and 4th floor here. We're going to jump up to the 5th floor, and in the 5th floor, you won't be able to see it, but I'll point out there's a skylight. The point being that in the space you're about to see on the 5th floor, light then pours through. If you go back once again, Dirk, to flood the 3rd and 4th floor, the interior spaces with natural light. All of the classrooms are outward facing on an outside wall, but there's interstitial space between them. And so that those aren't dark and unhappy places, we brought in natural light from above. So going to the 5th floor, again, similar idea, except that instead of this open space to below that you had on the 3rd and 4th floors, you have on the 5th floor this outdoor gathering space. So again, classrooms on your right, on your left, and you can see the variety of breakout spaces and access to technology. Again, in support of 21st learning and differentiated instruction. Next. What you see on this next slide, we call the learning stair. It's a communicating stair, a convenient stair between the 2nd and 3rd floors, but also provides this amphitheater, interior amphitheater, as well as a number, again, of differentiated spaces for learning. Learning on display in the back right, you can look down into one of the maker spaces. And this occurs in the heart of the school. Beyond that, the glass that you see beyond that looks down onto one of the outdoor roof learning environments. Part of the program called for direct access from your laboratories to outside. Well, there are a number of competing priorities needing access outside, so there just wasn't enough perimeter to get that, so we moved those labs up and we created a safe outdoor environment on one of the roofs. And so that's an overview of some of the 21st century learning opportunities that are within the school. Again, we could show you pictures of classrooms and laboratories, but you guys can imagine you've been there. I will say that those classrooms and laboratories would be supplemented with copious technology in the ways that your students are using your technology today, and then some. And I think that's it from my portion. It is indeed.
While Bill was talking, I figured out how to use the laser, so that's good. So what I would like to do is just quickly walk you through the floor plans. Floor plans are hard to read, they're hard to imagine spatially, so I won't spend a great deal of time on them just to orient you. But here we are at the main level, and this red line indicates the limits of the existing middle school. So what you're seeing here is the serving line for the high school, and we will be renovating a portion of the existing middle school to create the new central kitchen in this area with a middle school serving line, and we will then relocate the band and music programs that we're disrupting to the other side of that first floor. So the serving line in the kitchen here goes over to here, so we'll flip-flop all of that. So work in the middle school in that third summer. Yeah. And so the connection then between the middle school and the high school then occurs at that lowest level, and it passes by the main office and in this big public space. So this is the main front door of the school. This is the that raised paved plaza that I mentioned earlier. So you'll be coming through here. This is a secure vestibule. This is all ballistic glass. We had a great meeting with Officer Carter from the police department and Mr. Polaire from emergency management in the city last week to begin the conversation around creating a safe and secure school. So we know a great deal about what their concerns and priorities are. I'll touch on that in a moment. But the whole arrival and the placement of the security control desk will be here. Immediately on your right then is the auditorium for community use, and we'll actually have doors that will separate other portions of this first floor so that after hours use of the building limits access to other areas of the school. But as you move to this end of this first floor, this is the second floor elevated running track that is in the auxiliary gym. And this is open to below. You're looking from above down into and all the way through the gymnasium. And I'll show you that in just a moment. So this level is all about creating a secure, shared, welcome and arrival experience for all. Students, teachers, visitors, members of the community, every day. And so here's what that might feel like at the moment. So this is when I've just cleared the security vestibule. We're relocating the Mustang Medallion that's here in this school. The main office is on your left. The Performing Arts Auditorium is on your right. And then right up those stairs is the Media Center and the Makerspace for after-hours use by the community. And just beyond this then, if I turn around and look back, there's the elevated running track on your left. One level down over the railing is the gymnasium lobby, and I'm looking up at that second level. The media center and the makerspace is right here. And then there's the dining terrace, and the softball field is just outside those windows. Very open, very inviting, controlled access, first floor. Oops, sorry. One level down, you'll see the outline of the stairs coming down from above. This is the open stair, and you arrive at this grand lobby that serves the main competition gymnasium and the auxiliary gym with an emergency egress out the back. So the only thing that really resides at that level are community access and student access to that gymnasium. I'll point out here, and I'll see it again in a moment. These are separate stairs, scissor stairs, into the gymnasium directly from the boys and girls locker room below. So the stair here, now I'm at the lowest level. This is the stair, and you'll see the door that connects this locker room to that stair, and that stair goes up while this one comes underneath. And so the boys and girls locker room up to the gymnasium, they each have their own secure stair. At this level, we have the wrestling room, the fitness room, and each of these hallways exit directly to the football field. And this is performing arts instruction, and this is the back stair up to the back of the auditorium above. So the back of the building, these are the vomitoriums that connect those two corridors that we just looked at. So players will be able to come directly from the locker rooms directly onto the football field through these tunnels. This is all the glass in the athletic spaces, and then all of this is academic space on top. One level above zero then at the main level is the second floor, and this is occupied by the guidance and the media center primarily. Here's the makerspace open to below, that view that we looked at earlier. Going up, Bill mentioned the learning stair. The next three levels are all academic space. They are all classrooms, labs, and collaborative learning and outdoor learning spaces. So this is the second level up, the third floor above zero. And here is outdoor terrace that opens directly to your STEAM labs. All of this is academic space, and this begins that climb up that collaborative stair that you saw in Bill's image a few moments ago. And all of this in the wide bar are classrooms, labs, and collaborative learning. The fourth floor, very much like the third floor, and again, here is that stair connecting the third to the fourth floor. Where I'm standing would be on a bridge that looks back over, and if I were to go to the right, I would be entering then that wider bar, and you can see the outside wall of that wide bar over there. So the idea of the bar is also is it allows every classroom to have access to natural light. And then again, from the fourth floor overlooking the third floor. Bill mentioned this earlier. And then once I'm at the top floor, fourth level up, all academic space and the outdoor terrace. Simple, flexible, secure, state-of-the-art learning space. And so there's that terrace. Come on. Couple comments on safety and security. I mentioned earlier that we had a great meeting to begin that discussion with Officer Carter and Mr. Polaire last Thursday. We learned a great deal about their concerns. They are training, I guess they're beginning training for teachers on lockdown procedures. And as you would imagine, one of their concerns would be about the extent of transparency and the use of glass in the school. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. All of this is running concurrent to the work that you're doing here in the school district around implementing best practices around safety and security. This comes from a school board meeting back in June, I believe. Yeah, June 19th. And so just a couple of comments. Security begins at the scale of the site. All of these these orange areas here are meant to suggest how much of the site you can actually see from inside the building. So passive supervision and surveillance of the school site from within, the idea of eyes on the street. So when you're on this campus, there's a very good chance that someone inside the building has already picked you up. Once you're in the building, this is that main level. Again, the main office is here, so the good visibility of that plaza. This is the secure vestibule, and all along here is that primary heart of the school. The Mustang Cafe is actually 2 feet below, so we can stand right here and we can actually overlook that entire dining space. Over 500 students in this area at one time. From this area, I can see into the gymnasium. I can see actually out onto the athletic stadium field. And likewise, when I'm here at the end, I can look all the way through the auxiliary gym. I can look back out onto the athletic complex as well. All from this one part of the school. As we go up, each of the academic floors is isolated. So if I were to come up here, I can't get past the barriers. It's much like an office building in that regard. There's a core, and then there are stair towers that serve the occupant load. So if there was an intruder that somehow gained access, or there was an event that occurred here, that trouble, that access is contained to areas on one side or the other of these red bars. This is where the doors will be that will be on automatic closers in the event of an alarm. Within each of these areas, there are also stairs that are indicated by the blue. We talked a lot about this on Thursday with Officer Carter and Mr. Polera. The notion of run, fight, height is going away in favor of evacuate the building. But if you are in a place, in the school, an active shooter event starts, and trouble is over here, stairs are available and convenient to you in other areas of the school to evacuate the building. We've talked about a number of strategies to consider and to incorporate in the design as we go forward that would improve, again, there are lockdown concerns around cover and concealment specifically. And we can talk about that as we go forward in the design. And then Jack, I'm sorry, would you?
First of all, thank you everybody again for coming this afternoon. We greatly appreciate your time. Sustainability for us is extremely important, and we know that it's extremely important for the city and the schools as well, and that serves as a baseline for us to continue with our efforts with this project. For us, sustainability starts on the outside of the building, and we'll continue on the inside as well. For us, it's part of being able to utilize the site in a very efficient manner, whether it's for stormwater or to affect glare for the building. For example, so as Dirk talked about, we have our existing athletic fields that we're not touching, but we also have new work that's going on here. So in order to be efficient with the site, we look for ways to address sustainability, in this particular case, stormwater management, in areas that we're already using. For example, the multi-purpose field that's located right here, we're using that for detention. We're also conscious about using softscape over hardscape. And if we are using hardscape, we're using porous material, and that serves as a strategy for our stormwater management as well. As we move forward towards the building and the building line, we're going to be using a high-performance building envelope. Part of that is addressing the glare that may happen, which is unwanted light. So as we look at the site, it was extremely important for us to be able to provide a lot of softscape, because softscape does absorb the light and prevents it from bouncing towards our building. Another thing that we wanted to address is certainly the greenery. The site is bounded by a lot of trees along the WMATA Access Road. We, in our project, are providing an additional 30,000 square feet of canopy. So when you do the math, that comes to about 21.5% of the site for us. And as we continue through the design process and working with you all here, we're going to continue to maintain that and hopefully exceed that number. What you also see here is a diagram that talks about our net zero strategy. As part of our baseline project here, we show geothermal fields. In addition to that, we show the approximate area that's needed to obtain net zero energy with the use of PV panels. So part of our sustainable strategy is, of course, achieving LEED, and we are on target to achieve LEED Gold. And what this shows here is our energy use intensity. And it's a number that we use to describe basically how the building is how efficient the building is. And part of that is the use, of course, systems, and geothermal plays a huge role in that. LED lights does as well. So what we're targeting here is 22.4. And what that means is that through the use of the right materials, efficient systems, right siting of the building, we're able to achieve an energy use intensity index of 22.4. And from that, with the addition of power generation, we can get to net zero. So as we move forward here, we talk about the different ideas of getting to our baseline here: reduction, reclamation, and absorption. And so when I talked about the use of high efficiency equipment, which is the VRF systems, in addition to the geothermal, boilers and occupancy sensors to help reduce the use of lights, LED we talked about, and of course the glazing at the building perimeter. I think that's probably it. I'll give it back to you.
So this is just a slide for me to, again, express the gratitude on behalf of the team for the opportunity to work with the City of Falls Church and Falls Church City Public Schools to deliver this great high school. Everything you're seeing was submitted in May, and we are just beginning to pick it back up and go forward. But all of this, again, very, very preliminary work. So thank you.